Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another episode of LVAD Talks. I am sitting here with Armin Muzafirovic, and I'm so proud of saying that right, y'all. Y'all just don't even understand. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Sean?
I'm awesome. I invited you here to tell your story. I like getting it from a younger guy's perspective. By the way, how old are you?
You know, I was asked that same question last week, and I hesitated. I wanted to say I'm 17 still, but, you know, I'm hitting 24 this year, so it's kind of surprising, but...
Oh, you're a baby. You got a way to go.
I got a long way to go.
Yeah, come holler at me when you hit, like, 46.
It'll be a long time until then.
So tell me about your story. How did you discover you had heart failure?
Oh, man, it really starts back without even knowing I had any type of a disease to even start with. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in New York, born and raised for 15 years, lived there. And around like 10 or 11 years old, I started seeing how my body wasn't able to function like a normal teen or kid was able to function. My arms didn't go straight outward, like 180 degrees. They stopped, like halfway, made a triangle. Mm-hmm. And I was curious about that because at the same time I was training with, soccer and martial arts, and no one was able to do an arm bar on me because my arm doesn't go out straight. You can't pin me down or tap me out.
Right.
So I was curious of what was happening, and we went to specialists and doctors. No one knew. They all thought it was like a bone disorder, that my bones were not growing properly or something along those lines. But x-ray results show that bones are perfect, everything's good. Mm. So that wasn't the problem, and no one knew what the problem was, really. And then, after I lived in New York for so long, we moved to Iowa. When I was about, I want to say 15 years old, I moved to Iowa. And after going to a primary care physician, he examined me, looked at me, and said, he doesn't know what's happening. So he wants me to see a specialist. And at this time, I was already seeing orthopedic specialists, different other type specialists that you can probably name. So what's going to make one doctor different from all the other ones I've seen that said nothing's wrong with me, So I saw a neurologist, and neurologists are going to, have a different viewpoint. They're going to have a different specialty and study. Mm-hmm. So the neurologist looked at me and kind of was already, kind of pinpointing a diagnosis, but they wanted to do more tests, and they ran a blood test to see any genetic markers. And so obviously at this point, I never had a genetic test done on me before. And it was kind of hard to believe genetic tests, really, after having so many doctors say no to you or saying that you don't have anything wrong with you. Mm-hmm. But all it takes is one doctor to change your life.
Right, yeah.
Or any one person to change your life in that matter. So the doctors found that I had a genetic deletion in my genes that caused muscular dystrophy. So caused the weakening of the muscles and atrophy. Mm-hmm. And then with that, caused everything for my arms to kind of be the way they are. But when you go down on a microscopic scale, it's going to affect your heart. Mm. So your heart is the main organ that is going to control blood flow and everything else in your body. And so my heart muscle was weakening without me even knowing it. But I was functioning like a normal kid, running around, exercising. And someone with heart failure cannot do certain stuff to a certain point. Mm-hmm. So when you see me jumping off the walls as a kid, that what the hell's wrong with you? But at that point, I could not believe anything. It was just like a shock to me. And I was told at around 16 years old that I have Emery-Dreifuss muscular dystrophy, which is a rare muscular dystrophy that has no cure really at this point. And it's mainly just being monitored. And then with Emery-Dreifuss came the heart failure,
Mhm.
which caused weakening of the cardiac muscle. So you're not able to get that proper outflow and inflow of blood flow to your whole body. And it was still a shock to me, because at that time I was so fit, so energetic,
Mhm.
that you don't think that this can deter you from stopping, or not accomplishing your goals in life. And at 16, my doctor said, the neurologist said, that if you don't have any type of cardiac or any heart surgery in the near future, you won't see your 20s at all.
Mhm.
So imagine at 16 years old telling someone you won't probably live past 20. And that's the reality.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when you're a kid or a teenager, you don't think about those things.
Right,
You
right.
think you're gonna be, obviously you don't take life for granted, and or you take it life for granted or whatever, and you just want to live your life, be ambitious, be a rebel, go skydive, go jump off a bridge or something, and enjoy the adrenaline rush.
It's almost not like a realistic thing when you're that young.
It you know it it really puts you in a different mindset. And I didn't really believe anything at first. It took me years to really accept everything. And then uh, at 17, I went in for another visit to the cardiologist, and they took an x-ray of my heart. And through the x-ray, he shows me a normal 17-year-old and shows me. And the only difference is 3 times the normal size of a
Hmm.
normal heart. So, if you imagine your fist and, put 3 fists together, it's it's huge.
Right, right.
So at that point, that's when I started slowly believing more and more everything was happening to me. And once I accepted that, then you go on to the next phases of how to prevent, how to cure, and everything else. So at 17, I ended up having a pacemaker implanted, just a regular Medtronic pacemaker, and that was supposed to kind of increase my heart rate. So for a long time, my heart rate was in the low 30s to 40s
Okay.
at resting.
Hmm.
And usually people who have that type of resting heart rate are runners, because, they have to be athletic. They have to, have a different heart rate than everyone else. So doctors always ask me, are you a runner? I told them, I can run if you want me to. But other than that, you know, I'm just a normal kid, likes to play soccer, martial arts, and everything else. If I have to run, I'll run. You know, put a dog out there and let him chase me, but that's about it. And with that, the pacemaker was supposed to increase my heart rate. It really didn't do its job, because my heart rate was still, in the high 30s, mid 40s. It barely reached up like 60 at times, unless I really, really was exercising and getting my heart rate up. But then once I transitioned from the pediatric side to the adult side of cardiology, they started seeing different lab results of my heart function,
Hmm.
and they wanted to increase uh, my longevity of life, and prolong my life to have a better outcome, to implant an ICD, which most patients who are in heart failure know what an ICD is and how it can benefit you. So right before the ICD surgery that I was supposed to have in 2017 of March, I went out to Colorado on a ski trip with my school.
Hmm.
And out there, that's when, everything was kind of hitting me at once. Uh, that's when the heart failure really kicked my behind, and I started really feeling it.
How did you travel?
So what do you mean?
Did you ride? Did you drive? Did you go on a
Oh,
plane?
it was a drive in the minivan. A
Okay.
bunch of like I forgot, like 50 students or whatever, went up to the mountains in Colorado. And uh, once we got there, the next day, you get your skis, you get everything ready, and you get ready up to go up the mountain. Now I was having a blast. I love skiing. It's adrenaline rush. But when you're in Colorado, it's different from like the little slopes.
Right, right.
You're in the big boy leagues now.
Yeah.
And I was probably skiing for about 4 hours, and I reached the top of the mountain, before you reach the next top level at 12,000 feet. And I was already around 11,000 feet. It was, beautiful and cold and warm at the same time. So you don't know what to expect.
Mhm.
So I had lunch that day. And once I got out, I tried putting my skis back on and put my helmet on. And I just couldn't breathe. It felt like I was suffocating almost.
And the reason I asked you how you traveled, I was wondering because sometimes it's brought on by. I took a trip once in a plane, and I flew from
Mhm.
Virginia to Boston, and it hit me when I landed, and I went immediate AFib, and I think it was the change in altitude and pressure. So I'm wondering, do you think maybe the change in altitude, being that you're on top of a mountain, maybe kick that in a little?
It's really hard to say at that moment because there's so many different factors that could come to play and
Mm-hmm.
really dictate the outcome. But it could be a mix of everything, really. Uh, so as a patient, you're supposed to notify your doctors if you're traveling anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And me being the rebellious, what was it, 18-year-old, 19-year-old at the time, I didn't tell anyone.
Okay.
And mainly because I wasn't in that critical need or critical care of, telling someone I'm traveling
Mm-hmm.
because I was open freely to go anywhere. But so once we're on the mountain, 4 hours in, I'm having trouble breathing and putting my skis on and everything. I look down the hill. I'm like, oh, damn, this is going to be a long journey. I know I'm going to have to take like mini breaks and everything. And I just couldn't do it. Like you want to be, tough and you want to get down there, but you just mentally, you're not prepared for it. You're prepared to go up the mountain, but going down,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. So I went over to ski patrol and they started, examining me out and seeing my heart rate, my blood pressure and everything. And they were in shock because my heart rate was a 38 resting.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at me like, are you okay? I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine. It's normal for me. And then they checked my O2 stats, my oxygen levels. And it was, I want to say 86. So it was decreasing low, very low.
Mm-hmm.
So most likely reason was altitude sickness, that I just couldn't tolerate that type of altitude. And then having the heart failure kind of brought it even worse because uh, when they took me down to the ER at the mountain base, they started checking my troponin levels and everything else, check how am I doing. And they found that I had a spike. So I kind of had a mini heart attack
Mm-hmm.
while skiing that I never felt.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that weird? Like my first, well, my okay. So I share a lot of your story. I was diagnosed with heart issues when I was young. I had my first open heart surgery when I was 3. So I understand the whole rebellious thing and not wanting nobody to tell you what you can't do. Because
Yes.
I lived a large portion of my life like that. I think it actually helped because I was able to accomplish a lot of things that I wanted to accomplish just because people told me, no, you can't do it. But when I had my first heart attack, so I didn't have a problem after my surgery when I was 4 until I turned 40. And I went to the hospital, and they was telling me, you had a heart attack, and I'm like, nah, I'm fine, I'm chilling. I was playing with the nurses and joking around and everything. No, you had a heart attack. So I understand it's exactly what you're saying. Like, no, I didn't.
Yeah, it's when you think about it, it's crazy because usually when you think about heart attack, you think about, grasping on your chest and
Right,
falling to the
right.
floor.
Yeah, I never got the, how they say you get shooting pains and all that. I never got that. They said I had 2 heart attacks in the hospital.
I mean, when you think about it, it's crazy because you think of yourself not ever having that, but to anyone, it's possible to anyone to have anything
Mm-hmm.
happen to them. And so once they checked my troponin levels and they saw that mini heart attack, I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
So I wasn't able to leave the ER for 7 hours.
How far were you from home?
Oh man, 13 hours of drive.
Wow.
So, I was a long way away,
Uh,
to be honest. And to get up to the mountain, it takes about 2 to 3 hours depending on traffic,
Mm-hmm.
just to get on the top of like where you're being on the resort.
Okay.
So they had me. So I was at the base of the mountain, the ER that they have, and they were checking my labs every single hour for 7 hours. I was like, oh my gosh. Like every moment you're coming in here, check my blood,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't able to eat really at all because I was fasted for I want to say those 7 hours until I got to the ambulance ride.
Okay.
So they ended up calling my doctors in Iowa, and they wanted to see like, hey, we have your patient here. We're doing all this stuff to kind of help him, and my doctor tells them like, well, I don't see why he's up there, why he's not up there. I mean, he's an athletic kid.
Mm-hmm.
He loves to have an adventure. I wouldn't have stopped him from skiing or doing anything. So he knew that I was rebellious and wanted to be on an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that inside of me, I could not just sit down and, live my life as a couch potato. I had to be athletic and active no matter what. So he had contacts in Denver at the pediatric hospital where they ended up just transmitting or transporting me down to Denver.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to take a guess how long the hospital ride is, it was the most boring, most expensive ride I've ever spent ever. So 2.5 hours in the ambulance,
Mm-hmm.
hooked up to monitors, and just all you see is a pitch dark and just mountains on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got down there at the children's hospital, I spent the night. They were monitoring me, and they were so generous because they were about to let me just go out the same night and find my own way home, really. But I asked them like, is there any possible way I can spend the night here being monitored and catch a flight the next morning? And they were so generous to offer me to spend the night and be monitored, give me a voucher to the airport,
Mm-hmm.
which was like $60, and then my parents bought me a flight to come back home. Um, but I didn't really go home because I went to Nebraska. That's where I have family there, so I stayed with them for about a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I give a lot of thanks to the Children's Hospital in Denver because they really were generous, and you know, it's Happy Nurses Week right now, and I
Yeah.
want to thank them for that. Um, so after I got done with Denver, you always have to do your follow-ups with your doctor, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what happens. So I do a follow-up with them, and this now time as I'm in the adult side of the cardiology, and they want me to have an ICD implanted. So this is all happening within a short amount of time. So I had my mini heart attack on, I want to say January 2nd or 3rd,
Mm-hmm.
right after New Year's. And then I saw the cardiologist within 2 weeks. And then following that, that's when my heart failure started kicking in. That uh, your other organs are not cooperating right. So my liver at the time was excreting fluids,
Mm-hmm.
which caused edema, so more tissue overload of water around the body. And the best way I can explain it is if you look at your body right now and picture an S. So my body was filled with fluid, making an S.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what is going on with me right now? I thought, I gained about 20 pounds. And I was like, oh, wow, I haven't checked the scale in a few months, maybe because I was weightlifting so much. I gained
Probably
muscle
was
mass.
water weight.
It was all water weight.
Yeah.
And I was about 180 at that time. And so before that, I was like 170s, athletically built and everything else. And the water weight kind of was building up slowly, 13 pounds or more. So obviously your normal body has water weight to kind of nourish your body, but then with an extra overweight of fluids, it can hurt your body.
Mm-hmm.
So my body was not cooperating right. You had the swelling of the feet, swelling of the abdominal cavity, and it just wasn't really good for you because it affects your breathing. You can't really walk up the steps or
Mm-hmm.
run or do anything. So I go to my primary care physician. He provides me some Lasix pills, furosemide, just kind of get that fluid off a little bit. And I have a negative reaction to that, where I ended up in the hospital because I just couldn't, do anything.
Mm.
And shortly after that, I was still going to school at the same time. So I was working, I was going to school, and I had all my health problems going on at the same time. And I just really couldn't handle it that much. When I think back, it was just, I was surprised to see how ambitious I was to keep going each day, fighting it off,
Mm-hmm.
and not really knowing what's going on with me. And so I ended up having my ICD implanted in the middle of the semester of my school year. And because of that, I was not able to come back to school for about 2 months,
Mm.
just around where finals were happening.
Okay.
So I was mainly reflecting on other students providing me notes, looking at lecture videos or whatever is being provided in class, just to study at home and at the hospital as well. But because of my ICD surgery, there was a lot of complications with it. So as I mentioned, my heart was 3 times the normal size,
Mm-hmm.
which the doctors were not able to fully pinpoint locations within the chambers of the heart of where to put the leads for the ICD.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to stop the surgery, come back the next day, and get consent to do a thoracotomy. So that's when they separate the ribs to kind of go on the outside of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, I was spending at least, I want to say, 2 weeks in the hospital at that point. And my body was slightly more fluid overload. I had to kind of excrete more fluid off of the edema. Swelling of the feet was ridiculous. I couldn't walk. So everything was happening in a short amount of time. And as I started progressing further out from the hospital discharge date, uh, I started getting worse, really. And I had another doctor, a electrophysiologist, who wanted to do a revision surgery of my previous ICD surgeries. So this was about a month after.
Mm-hmm.
And this time around, he actually was able to pinpoint the locations by going through the neck, through the carotid artery, the jugular vein,
Mm-hmm.
and going through the heart, and then going through the femoral site. So going at 2 locations to kind of pinpoint exactly where to put the leads. And because of that, they were actually able to successfully do that procedure. But then I was still in the hospital for about a week. I had to kind of get all that fluid off and do the PT and OT stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then at that point, I was just ready to be done. Like, I wanted schools to be over. I wanted to be done with this semester. And I was so eager as a student to just get back into things. Because I was in the inpatient rooms, and I was just wanting to do schoolwork. Like, they're telling me rest,
Right.
recover, don't stress. I'm over here. I'm gonna stress. I'm gonna finish. Let's go. So, I mean, you're a teenager. You can't tell a teenager something that they can do, that they want to do.
Right. That's gonna make you want to do it harder.
And exactly. So, I was in the rooms. I'm over here just trying to learn, expand my knowledge. But instead of just expanding my knowledge from my classroom, I was expanding my knowledge in the real world. So I was learning stuff in the hospitals, how to take care of like patients. I was looking at how doctors and nurses treat patients, how they cure them, how they help them. And I was just examining everything around me. And so I got discharged out of the hospital. And within a week, I was back in school. I only came back to school for finals, so I barely know what's going on in classrooms. And I passed with flying colors.
Nice.
It was like an ABC, awesome. For someone who has not gone to school for 2 months and knows majority of the stuff, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I finished the semester, I was on a summer vacation. Summer break started. Let's enjoy it. And about 2 weeks after summer starts, I was still in the recovery phase from my ICD. So I wasn't supposed to be exerting myself or doing too much out of the limits.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one day, I think it was a Friday or Thursday, I had to pick up my brother from the bus stop. And I overslept my alarm because I took my nap. They told you to recover and rest, so I rested and recovered. But I overslept my alarm,
Mm-hmm.
and I overhear the bus going past the house, and I'm like, "Oh crap!"
Mm-hmm.
I start, exerting my body and start running towards the bus stop because if I don't pick him up, they're gonna send him to back to school or some place that they're gonna hold them there until the parents come and pick him up.
Right.
I don't want that, that burden. My parents kind of stop work and go pick him up or whatever. So I started running. This is the first time I ran in months.
Mm-hmm.
And I exerted my body to the limit where I collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up just having a tunnel vision. My vision just kind of went point black, pitch black, and I just couldn't see anything. And then I ended up falling in bushes of my neighbor's house. And what I didn't know was that once I fell and went unconscious, my ICD shocked me back to life.
That was about to be my next question. Did your ICD go off?
So I was unconscious at this time, and so it shocked me. And I was like, "What the hell's going wrong?"
Mm-hmm.
I see my brother trying to like run towards me and help me, but the bus driver's like, "No, you can't go there. We don't know who that is." And so that's my brother. He's yelling, "That's my brother. I need to go help him." So my neighbors are running towards me. They're trying to like help me and everything. They do some, the pulse ox, trying to see my oxygen levels and everything. And it was good. And it was 90s. I was reacting perfectly. It was just I felt unconscious for some reason. And then I was okay for the remainder of the day. It was just a shock to me, having that happen. And so the next morning, I take my pills and I go to the bathroom. But at this time, it happens when I'm in the bathroom. So I ended up collapsing in the bathroom, somehow hitting my nose somewhere where I was bleeding from my nose, and I was unconscious at the same time. My parents walk in and they're trying to wake me up and hold me. And I remember my dad telling me that as he was holding me, he felt a strong shock
Mm-hmm.
going through my body, and that's when I woke up. So as I'm waking up, my mom's calling 911. And at the same time, I told my brother all my medications, so he already knew like the list of medications. He was the doctor of the house at this time.
How old was your brother?
He was about, I want to say, 9 years old.
Okay.
So a 9-year-old knows all the medications. You know, all the medications that you have, he lists them out to the 911 and everything. So I was surprised, but it was good to tell them that I was medicated on certain
Mm-hmm.
medications. So once the ambulance arrives, they take me to the hospital, and they don't know what to do because I was reacting normally. I just had an episode that I had
Mm-hmm.
no clue I had an episode at all. So then I ended up getting transported down to my hospital where I ended up having all my surgeries, which is about a 2-hour drive. And on the way there, I was going into different types of tachycardia. So VT and SVT. My heart rate was 180s, 190, 200
Mm-hmm.
without just resting there. And at the same time, I can see on the charts and everything on the screen when am I going to have my next episode. And I tell the EMT like it's about to happen. It's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
He looks at me. He's like, "Yep, yep." He sees it on the EKGs like it's about to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
It's about to happen again. But these were just like mini like uh, heart rate increases. So many spikes of tachycardia that I just felt.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is leading towards the journey from my LVAD. So that night I ended up going into another episode, except this episode I'm in the ICU and I tell my mom like, "You should call the nurses. I'm about to have another episode." So I have an episode. I go unconscious. I wake up. I wake up to nurses all around me, and I'm like, "It happened again, didn't it?" With a smile on my face,
Mm-hmm.
happy as can be. And they're like, "Yeah, it happened again." And so that was really the last moment I saw myself in the ICU.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I know is I'm waking up in the cath lab, and I remember like the doctor's faces. They're about to do a balloon pump, most likely, and kind of figure out where they're going to put it, which leg they're going to insert it through. And out of nowhere, I see my nurse practitioner bust through the doors, and she's telling them to like, stop. Now, this is from my memory, so I can't tell you if I know I spoke with her a few times, and she said it did happen, but I might get lost in translation with my conscious state at the time. And I remember my parents were kind of standing outside of the room, and she told everyone to stop, and that we're going to have an emergency LVAD implantation in the coming days. And later on, she told me that she was trying to keep me, awake, trying to like keep me awake and, slap me in the face and whatnot, just keep me talking with her. But I was out of it. And so my heart function at the time was my EV or EF percentage was, I want to say like less than 15. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't really there. And my heart was failing. And this was around 2017 Memorial weekend. And my surgeon at the time was supposed to go on vacation, or either he went on vacation and came back and ended up doing the emergency LVAD surgery on me. So with the LVAD, I had no clue that I even was having an LVAD. I woke up a week later, a little bit more aware. But at this time, I didn't just have an LVAD. I had an LVAD and RVAD at the same time. Okay. So my whole heart was not cooperating correctly. And with the LVAD, I think I want to say, once they extubated me and took out the breathing tube, I was able to, do more studying and do more research on it. Mm-hmm. And I was really like into it because I was like, I want to know, what do I have? What is keeping me alive right now? Mm-hmm. And with that, I started just researching. I found my LVAD groups. I found Andrew Jones, the fitness model, without the pulse. Mm-hmm. I started finding all these individuals, all these resources about the LVAD. And I want to say this is right the same night I got extubated. I was just like researching nonstop. And within about a week or two later, I ended up going in for another surgery to take out the RVAD. Mm-hmm. Because the surgeon said my right heart function is doing better, but now it's just your left heart that's kind of the weakest point. So with the LVAD, it was really an interesting surgery, 12 hours long. And with the RVAD, it came with other complications. So no matter what surgery you have, there's going to be complications no matter what. It's the risk. Mm-hmm. So when they took the RVAD out, for some reason, they ended up pulling one of the leads from the ICD with it. Mm. And they said, we have to do the ICD surgery again. Mm-hmm. And I was like, great, now what? And so I had the EP fellows come in and Jay try to like explain to me the surgery that's going to happen. They told me that we might be able to successfully implant it back again. However, if not, we're going to have to implant it onto your neck. Mm. I told them, do whatever you have to do, but no implantation on the neck. Right. I don't want to hardware it on my neck. Right. Because that's a risk of exposure to so much, right. Electricity and water. Mm. They don't mix well. No. So they successfully, implanted back the lead into the chamber, wherever it was. But this time around, they made a deeper pocket. Mm-hmm. So obviously it went lower down to my, on the left side of my chest, lower down much deeper. And this one hurt more. Mm-hmm. So then I spent about 33 days in the hospital with the LVAD. And a lot of education, a lot more knowledge and credibility of learning how to live with an LVAD. And obviously with an LVAD, you're not able to shower normally. Right. Yeah. You have a shower bag, you have saran wrap, you have a lot of stuff.
Yeah. It takes a 15-minute shower can take you an hour and a half.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I wasn't able to shower at all in those 33 days. So mainly I resulted back to, the wipes, mm-hmm. those sponges, the rag.
The antiseptic wipes they give you.
Like most of the time they're hot. Yeah. But if you get the cold ones, oh God, please warm them up for me at least. Yeah. But yeah, 33 days spent in the hospital. And once I came home, I was like, when am I able to shower properly?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say within about a week after coming home, I got the clear to kind of like shower with the shower bag and everything else. And like you said, that 15-minute shower can take an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I took my sweet time of enjoying water just pouring onto me because I couldn't enjoy that feeling before.
Mm-hmm.
Because
It's funny how you appreciate the little things.
it's the little things. Because everyone always says don't take life for granted. Then as a teenager, as someone who was rebellious and adventurous, I took it for granted. I didn't think that these little things can matter that much.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I enjoyed that shower. I scrubbed all that dead skin off of me, and I was rejuvenated back to myself. But with the LVAD and everything else, you have so much other stuff that comes with it, mentally and physically. So you have to be prepared, you know, all around to be prepared for that heart transplant. But a few months after, I had my LVADs. This was back in May of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So in September of 2017, they ended up putting me on a milrinone 24-hour drip.
Mm-hmm.
So I was getting IV medications 24/7 to support my right heart function. And at the same time that they were uh, putting that PICC line and everything in, that's when I was listed for the transplant.
Okay.
So this was right around September 11th, September 12th. And I was just so eager to have the transplant to kind of get back to normal life
Mm-hmm.
because you had to be emotionally prepared mentally and physically, and plus have a support system around you no matter what to
Right.
lead you to success.
Yes. And I tell everybody your support system is everything.
Without them, it's going to be hard. No matter what life throws at you, you will be dealing with some hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that support system is going to save you. And my mom and my dad were my support system along with my family. But my mom was the main person. She spent 33 days with me in the hospital nonstop, and she did my dressing changes.
Mm-hmm.
You had those, was it every 3 days, the dressing change, or the weekly ones.
Right.
And no matter every time you have to take a shower, you got to change them right away.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you just got to watch out for infections and do all this type of stuff. So, my mom was my hero, and she was my support system. She was my everything, in that time. And she never left my side. And the LVAD changed my perspective of life.
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking at how to be more grateful and thankful for everything. And I had the LVAD for about 10 months. And within those 10 months, every month, every couple of weeks, I was in the hospital, either getting fluid off, having a potential call for a transplant. My labs were not good. I had to come back in, be monitored. So all those things, you battle with and try to overcome. And so for 10 months, I was just shy about 10 months by 4 days. I get my second potential call for a transplant. And this was in March of 2018 that I got the call. It was like a Saturday morning. I come down to the hospital, and I'm so ready. And they start preparing me. You have your blood tests, you have your other, your x-rays, I can't imagine what else they got to go through to kind of get you prepped for that
Right.
surgery.
Yeah.
So they told me, like, we're going at 4 a.m. in the morning, enjoy some, last minute snacks or whatever. So at that time I was like, man, what am I going to eat? So I got a turkey sandwich with some chips. Have some Doritos because, why not have some Doritos and just relax. enjoy those final moments of having the LVAD,
Mm-hmm.
because the next morning you have a new life, a new lease on life, a second chance at life that you can be grateful for and thankful for that donor who saved your life.
Right.
And so, what most people don't know is, if you have an LVAD and you go for a transplant surgery, it's going to take longer,
Mm-hmm.
about a couple hours longer than normal surgery.
Because of
Normal
the
heart,
trauma from your first surgery.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, like, it can be from the trauma. It can be from taking the pump, the LVAD itself out, and that
Scarring.
scarring and everything,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, scar tissue that's around inside, you can't tell. No one can tell until you open up. So I think my surgery was about 13, 12 hours in that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And a normal surgery without an LVAD would be about 6 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you think about it, uh, those 6 to 8 hours, 2 hours are just prepping. That's just,
Yeah.
making sure all the instruments are there, your
Mm-hmm.
body's clean. And the heart transplant itself can take about 30 minutes to an hour. And everything else is just connecting the veins, the arteries, the nerves, whatever needs to be connected, and suturing yourself up. Uh, but like I said, there's always complications. So I was a bleeder,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to leave me open for about a day, to just kind of let that bleeding rest aside and get drained out, or get taken care of. And so the next day, I ended up having a full closure, and they took the ICD out as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I was done.
Nice.
So I started my new lease on life, and I spent about, I want to say, 3 weeks in the hospital. A little bit longer than they expected me to be in there, but that's all only because they want to monitor you. They want to make sure that you're in good condition to leave the hospital and not come back
Mm-hmm.
with any signs of infection, any complications. And when I think back to that moment when they told me that I can leave the hospital, I was so happy.
What was the first thing you did?
Oh man, you want
Oh,
you want the story?
even better, even better. What's the first thing you ate?
So I told my dad I'm coming home, and I told him, like, don't tell my brother. I want to surprise him.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I did was I surprised him. I
Mm-hmm.
walked into the living room. He's over here chilling, watching Netflix, whatever, on the TV. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? He jumps up with shock, hugs me, and starts crying. And then my dad was making lunch at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and he made some, good rice with some chicken,
Uh-huh.
add some, nice European spices. I was like, this is good. I miss this,
All right.
because hospital food, and
Yes.
hospital food is not
Especially
good.
cardiac hospital food.
Oh. And so with the food, let's just jump to food for a second. I ended up having my mom go down to the cafeteria at times
Uh-huh.
and just, give me some cheat meals,
Right, right.
just because even if they were high in sodium or whatever, it kind of just lets your body feel the different texture of food, get
Mm-hmm.
that flavor in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know how bland
Yes.
those foods
Even
that they
and when they
provide
did
you.
in my hospital, even when they give you spices, they give you like Mrs. Dash. Like you might as well left that alone.
Or they give you mish dash with all that much flavor.
Right.
And uh, with all that stuff, I ended up actually using Miss Dash as flavoring for my spices. I use that garlic and herb because it has a better mixture than the regular
Yes.
original. Because the original is just it tastes weird,
Yeah.
but with the garlic and herbs and everything else, you mix in there with turmeric, and you just add a bunch of flavors to your meal.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, most of the time they give you pepper. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with pepper?
I was a pepper hoarder.
I mean, I like pepper, but all they gave me was pepper all the time. I was like, what am I put, like, I can't have salt, and pepper is my only option. I'm like, I'll be sneezing by the time I get to eating.
I would hide my condiments. Like everyone. So when I was in the hospital, this is before DoorDash. I can't think of the name of the company, but DoorDash eventually ended up buying them out.
Mhm.
And they would deliver in the hospital, in the heart hospital, up to the fifth floor. So once I found that out, I was like, oh. But the only thing that I would sneak stuff sometimes, because I was in the hospital for almost like 2 months.
Hmm.
And I would sneak stuff in sometimes, but the one thing that the nurses would let me have that they wouldn't trip about was sushi.
Okay.
So yes, I was a sushi hoarder, and then I would hide the soy sauce in
And you know,
one of them drawers.
they have a ton of sodium inside of them,
Yeah,
so
but you only
they
use
got.
it because you use just a little bit, just enough.
Hmm.
Like on them eggs in the morning, just a little, just a drop or two. That's all. Just make it bearable.
Yeah.
The eggs are already glowing bright yellow, so
Mhm. Might as well just add some flavor to them.
right.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back at it, I wasn't much of a hoarder for most stuff. I know it was mainly supplies, band-aids and whatnot, Tagaderm. I had those more than anything because you never know when you have a bleeding
Yeah.
issue.
Mhm.
And so my go-to stuff in the hospital was ice cream.
Mhm.
I could not get enough ice cream. So most of the time, like I had 1 or 2 cups of ice cream a day.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, this is hitting the
Because you
spot.
got to find something to get you by.
Oh man.
I think mine was apple juice. Because I was on a diabetic diet too.
Okay.
And even though, they'll give me juices, but I couldn't have salts and I had to have bland food. So the
Hmm.
highlight of my day was getting a couple, one of those 2 or 3 of those little apple juices, and I would hide them under my little desk.
I mean, it comes in clutch when you need them.
Right.
But when I think back at it, ice chips, Jolly
Yes.
Ranchers,
Yes.
because with all that from the LVAD, dry mouth, or even
Mm-hmm.
with transplant, dry mouth is so common that you want to just keep your mouth moist and have it, not be dry.
Yes, I
Just
was
have
definitely an
something in
ice
there.
eater. Yes.
Oh, my mom was yelling at me like, "You're eating so much ice, you're like hurt yourself." I had a cup of ice, just down that every single
Mm-hmm.
day. But uh, I had a nurse in the ICU at the time for both my LVAD and my transplant, and she would make her famous protein smoothie or protein shake, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she put like ice cream in there, some milk, and mix it up and gives you in those little bottles. They can measure how much
Yeah.
fluid you're drinking.
Yeah.
And I would have that almost every single day
Uh-huh.
because it gives you the calories, it gives you the protein that you need.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is really hitting the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Cassie, if you're listening to this, I love your protein milkshakes at the hospital. Um, but yeah, when I would go back with the LVAD, you had such a strict diet.
Mm-hmm.
No low salt or no salt, which is hard at first. And then since you're on your Coumadin, your warfarin, you have to watch out for your vitamin K
Vitamin
levels.
K, yeah.
So
And
your
so
leafy
I'm fighting
greens.
with that now because I have to. One thing keeping me from transplant is my BMI.
Okay.
And, your go to thing when you're dieting is salads and green leafy things. And now, I understand now that, it's either all or nothing.
Hmm.
You got to eat it all the time or you can't eat it at all. And yeah, that vitamin K thing is still getting me. I have to check my warfarin once. I get my INR checked once a week, and
Hmm.
yeah, that's like
Yeah.
because I'm 6 years out. I've had my
Hmm.
LVAD for 6 years, and really that's the one thing that and having to stay away from water
Yeah.
are the two things that really remind me that I have an LVAD.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, the vitamin K levels in your INR are gonna fluctuate,
All the time,
and
and sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to it.
it's just life. It just
Mm-hmm.
happens. And I remember they told me like I couldn't eat leafy greens. I'm like, well, there goes my salads, there goes my
Right,
cabbage.
right.
So I kind of figured out like what can I have that's green that I can eat almost all the time. And I found out green peppers because
Oh.
it wasn't going to affect me that much for my vitamin K levels because I was doing a little experiment too. I ate it for a week, ate it, didn't eat for a week, and I checked them, and it had no correlation, with the thing. It didn't affect it at all. So green peppers I would have for my meals, like almost a couple times a week,
Mm-hmm.
and that kept me, insane. And sometimes lettuce, just a little bit, like a little bit of cabbage and lettuce, and just a little bit, not like a full bowl of salad that
Yeah.
they get at Olive Garden,
Right.
but just enough to get you by. And so the diet was kind of tricky at first, but you kind of build off from that. You do research and you study what type of food you can eat and what you can't eat. I love sushi as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at what sushi can I eat, and obviously you don't want to eat raw sushi because that can
Mm-hmm.
have different types of bacteria inside of it that needs to be cooked to kind of eliminate. So California rolls, I'll have
All
California
day
roll
long. All
and
day long.
whatever else that's cooked and not fried to kind
Right.
of eat. So I still do that even with my transplant. I stay away from like raw food and just eat what's cooked. Fried food, I have a hit or miss depending on what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on who makes it. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, diet is the biggest thing for everything. It can make or break you,
Mm-hmm.
along with physical and mental stability. So if you're staying active, I know with my LVAD, I wasn't able to stay active as much as the doctors would have loved me to. I could because I fought the edema so much
Mm-hmm.
that even walking a couple of times, you just get tired.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a struggle. Even with cardiac rehab, I went through that, finished it, but at the same time, it barely helped me until I got my transplant. Then cardiac rehab, I was excelling so much um, because when I got the transplant and they extubated me, I took the breathing tube out. I was up and walking 30 minutes around the ICU within 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're looking at me like, this dude's crazy. I
Yeah,
mean,
but that's the first thing. That's the best thing for you. As soon as you get out, walk as soon as you can.
because that's going to get your butt out of the door.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell you that. Keep walking, keep doing. But like, I was exaggerating my body to the max because my heart rate was like 120. And then I never felt my heart rate I never heard it outside my chest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was walking around the ICU, going through it, and I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. But my lactic acid spiked, and I was really hurting my muscles at the time
Mm-hmm.
by not recovering. And so my body had to recover, and they ended up putting me back on fluids, get more edema.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a hit, and then you have a miss, and then you have a hit and miss at the same time, and then you have to fight them off. So the transplant journey was not easy in the hospital. I got a couple of blood clots, some thrombus in my arms, so little tiny blood clots that they kind of had to resolve with blood thinners and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't able to have any IVs because of the blood clots.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up trying to put an IV through my leg. And so they ended up putting like a 3 lumen, I want to say a central line
Mm-hmm.
through, I can't remember if it was the artery or the vein, but in order to draw blood.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a messy little operation because I was bleeding for 24 hours. They just couldn't stop the bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't move out of the bed. I was bedridden for about 40 hours. And that was just insane because every few hours I'm chasing gauzes and just making sure the pressure's on there and stopping it. And it took about 30 hours to get just someone from the department to just kind of suture it closed, like just stop it from bleeding. And finally they came in there, they sutured it up, stopped the bleeding. And I walked like my leg was broken. I had to walk like with a limp because it just wasn't, I couldn't move too much because if I moved too much, I risked rupture of the suture and bleeding more. So, there's a lot of complications that come with it, and you just have to fight through it and do your best to overcome it all. So I think that's majority of my journey, really.
So how long has it been since your transplant?
So last month, or was it? This is already May. 2 months ago, I hit 3 years.
Awesome.
So I'm coming up on 3 years and 2 months later this month.
Awesome. So what are your plans for the rest of your life?
So plans for the rest of my life. Right now, I'm finishing up my senior year of college. I only have 3 more classes to finish up before I get my bachelor's degree. And then my future outlook is going into the medical field. Back in 2016, I set myself up for a journey into healthcare. And, my dad always told me to focus on what you really want to do in life. And since you already had all these operations and all this knowledge in the hospital,
Mhm.
why not just go do something in the hospital setting? And so I'm setting out to be, the first doctor in the family.
Mhm.
So that's the outlook. No matter what life throws at me, what obstacles I get in my way, becoming a doctor is going to be my all-time goal. And helping others. I mean, that sounds generic, but when you come from a patient doctor standpoint, helping others from what you experienced and not have them experience certain things or have them experience something that's even better, and just provide that advocacy and that patient care knowledge,
Mhm.
that stuff that you learned, that you saw, because we all see things that can be improved, be it from a doctor, be it from a nurse, be it from anyone, even from real life, your daily encounters. You can always improve something. So helping someone out in the future is going to be the all-time ultimate goal.
Mhm.
And so with having the transplant, I became an advocate for organ donation, for LVADs, for patients who are undergoing such stress and trauma, to kind of ease in that transition, to kind of uplift them and open their minds, because it's a very tough time. It can be anxiety over the roof, depression, uh, because there's a lot of stuff I didn't mention. Like when I had my LVAD, I ended up having 2 episodes of shock
Mhm.
that was conscious. And so when you end up having go through those shocks consciously, you're like amazed, like what the heck just happened?
Mhm.
And because of those shocks, I ended up having to go to the hospital. And because those shocks were so affecting my heart rate and my ICD, that it wasn't cooperating rightly. And so my heart rate was like 180s, 190s. And so they had to externally defibrillate me with those pads in the ER.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
I've had my ICD shot me, but I haven't had that pleasure yet.
so I had the pleasure of doing that consciously.
Uh-huh.
So the number one rule is to do it unconsciously. So
Right.
sedate the patient,
Uh-huh.
and if they're awake, what the heck are you doing? Sedate them. So I was conscious. I saw everything was happening to me. I had an exorcism in that bed. I leaped out.
Right.
Um, so I had like 50 joules of electricity run through my body to get my heart rate back to normal. But what I endured in that ER room was a lot of uh, was not a lot of knowledge of how to take care of a patient with an LVAD,
Mm-hmm.
or what to do if something happens with an LVAD. Because there's a lot of stuff that requires a lot of training, a lot more knowledge to be aware. So obviously, I want to do more advocating and more education throughout hospitals, especially those who have not been aware of what an LVAD is,
Mm-hmm.
or even seen an LVAD patient. Because I had, people look at me like, "What is this?"
Yeah, that's
it's
common.
it's different. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm a living being without a pulse,
Yeah.
and that's what I am. And I want to help people understand how to take care of those who are in need and are going through these certain things.
That is, I believe you can do it. I think you got the right spirit, and you're gonna make it happen.
All it takes is the right mindset and the right motivation to strive to that uh, success. Really, to all it takes is one step to have that domino effect to put everything else in better perspective.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, this is a part of the show where I always come to people and I ask them if somebody came to you, somebody younger came to you and said, man, I think I'm going to have an LVAD. What would you tell them?
Oh man, It's a hard question to really ask, but when you go through that journey, you think about it at times. I mainly just tell them it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to have mixed feelings about certain things, but just know like the overall care that you're going to get is going to improve your life. No matter how long it takes, those doctors or nurses, those experts, they want to see you live. They don't want to just have you be another statistic. They want to see you strive and be great. They want to see you overcome the challenges and the obstacles that you are going to endure, because life is precious and don't take it for granted. Do the things you want to do and listen and follow your body and the experts, because for a certain part of my life, I didn't. And if I took action earlier on, I would have probably had a little bit better outcome. But still, the future is undecided, and you just got to do your best to ensure that you are having the best life that you can.
How can people reach you on social media?
So yeah, my Instagram is armin.muza. There you can find my different handles, my different emails. Reach out to me. I have my own link tree that has all my listed documents, from presentations to conferences I've done, all the other ways of getting a hold of me. So yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been LVAD Talk. I am Sean. This is Armin. We appreciate your time. Look us up on YouTube now. You can search LVAD Talk on YouTube. Anywhere that you get your podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for your time today. Armin, I appreciate you, sir. I want to keep up with you. I want to follow your journey. I know you can do it. All right, say your last name.
Muzafirovic.
I want to see Dr. Muzafirovic in the very near future.
And I just will be your cardiologist in the near future.
Come on, bring it.
All right, let's go.
Thank you for your time, and thank you all for listening. This is LVAD Talk, and we are out.